What's your problem?
They dismissed it as low-budget sci-fi until it exposed the world hiding in plain sight. They Live wasn't just strange and subversive, it was dangerous. Studio resistance, political backlash, a director fighting for his vision against forces that wanted it silenced. What audiences saw was campy rebellion, but the truth behind it is even darker.
As to what becomes of it all, it really boils down to our ability to accept.
From casting battles to a 6-minute fight scene that nearly destroyed its stars, from hidden political messages to the secrets that kept it buried for decades, They Live became the cult classic Hollywood never wanted you to understand. How close did John Carpenter come to abandoning it? What risks pushed Roddy Piper to the edge? And why does this film still feel like a warning no one wants to hear?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Get ready to uncover 20 shocking truths about They Live that they tried to hide. Hidden fact. 1. Carpenter's last stand with Hollywood. By the late 1980s, John Carpenter's relationship with Hollywood was hanging by a thread. Once hailed as the mastermind behind Halloween and Escape from New York, he had grown increasingly bitter about the system. Studios wanted safe blockbusters, predictable box office hits. Carpenter wanted risk. He wanted truth. They Live became his breaking point, a film born out of spite as much as creativity. The studio system was suffocating, Carpenter later admitted. This project was his rebellion, a final swing at the establishment that had both made and betrayed him. He filled the film with satire so sharp it was practically an act of war against the culture around him. Carpenter knew it would cost him. He knew executives would bury it, but he didn't care. They Live wasn't a career move. It was a statement. And for Carpenter, that statement became the hill he was willing to die on.
How are you today, sir?
Okay, how's it going?
Fine, thank you.
Carpenter didn't just make a movie. He lit a fuse. And decades later, They Live is still burning. Hidden fact 2. The wrestler who was never supposed to star. When the studio looked at They Live, they saw one glaring problem: Roddy Piper. He wasn't a trained actor. He wasn't a bankable name. He was a wrestler, a performer known for over-the-top showmanship in the ring, not subtlety on screen. Executives begged John Carpenter to cast a real star, someone who could guarantee box office numbers. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kurt Russell, names they trusted. Carpenter refused. He saw something in Piper the studio never would. Piper carried the wear and tear of a working-class fighter, a man who lived paycheck to paycheck, hustling in a brutal industry. Carpenter wanted that reality. His character, Nada, wasn't meant to be a Hollywood superhero. He was an invisible man, the kind of face you'd pass on the street and never notice. Piper embodied that. Casting him was a gamble that could have sunk the entire film. Instead, it gave They Live its soul. Imperfect, raw, and unforgettable.
So depressed, I don't know what to do.
What Hollywood called a gamble became destiny. Piper wasn't just cast in They Live, he was carved into its soul. Hidden fact. 3. A script written in anger and whiskey. They Live didn't begin as a studio-approved screenplay. It began as rage scribbled onto paper late at night. Carpenter adapted the short story 8 o'clock in the morning, but the bones of the script came straight from his fury at Reagan-era America. He wrote while drinking whiskey, pouring his disgust with consumerism and corporate greed into every scene. The billboards in the film weren't fantasy. They were exaggerations of the real advertisements plastered across Los Angeles. The alien rulers weren't science fiction. They were metaphors for the elites Carpenter believed were strangling the country. In interviews, Carpenter admitted he wasn't aiming for subtlety. He wanted to hit audiences in the face with what he saw as truth. They Live wasn't just a story. It was a manifesto, sharpened into dialogue and imagery, designed to wake people up. And in doing so, Carpenter created one of cinema's most dangerous scripts. They Live wasn't entertainment. It was a weapon. And once unleashed, there was no taking it back. Hidden Fact 4. The studio that tried to kill the message period, Universal wanted aliens, not politics. When executives first read Carpenter's script, they panicked. The social commentary was too sharp, too aggressive. It mocked consumer culture, attacked corporate power, and hinted at government complicity. They pushed Carpenter to tone it down, to sand away the edges, to turn They Live into something easier to market. Carpenter refused. He dug his heels in, defending every poster, every line of dialogue, every ounce of anger baked into the film. The studio retaliated quietly. They cut the budget. They scaled back promotion. When release day came, They Live received only a fraction of the push given to other films of the time. Carpenter always believed the sabotage was deliberate. Universal didn't just want the movie to underperform, they wanted the message erased. Hollywood had given him money to make a monster flick. Instead, he handed them a manifesto, and they buried it alive.
Our ideal of vision.
Excuse
we don't want
me.
to just survive.
The studio thought they could bury They Live, but truth has a way of clawing back to the surface. Hidden Fact 5. Sunglasses that changed movie history. They looked like nothing more than a gimmick. Plastic, oversized sunglasses bought in bulk. But Carpenter knew what they symbolized. Through them, Roddy Piper's character could finally see the world as it truly was. A landscape controlled by propaganda and hidden masters. Billboards that once sold products now screamed commands: obey, consume, marry, and reproduce. The aliens were suddenly everywhere, hiding in plain sight. The glasses became the beating heart of the film, a metaphor for awareness, for choosing to see beyond the illusion. Ironically, executives nearly cut the idea, dismissing it as too silly. But Carpenter fought to keep it, and in doing so, created one of the most iconic props in cinema history. To this day, the image of Piper sliding on those sunglasses is instantly recognizable. It's not just a moment of revelation, it's a warning. Once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. And that's exactly what made the studio so nervous.
I thought you boys understood. It's business. That's all it is.
Those sunglasses weren't just a prop, they were a revolution. And once you put them on, the world was never the same. Hidden Fact 6. The fight scene that nearly broke bones. 6 minutes. That's how long it lasted on screen. But for Roddy Piper and Keith David, the alley fight in They Live stretched into weeks of rehearsals, bruises, and real pain. Carpenter wanted it raw. No quick edits, no stunt doubles, no Hollywood polish. Just two men tearing into each other until exhaustion won. Piper, a seasoned wrestler, was used to controlled violence. But film fights demanded repetition, and repetition meant injuries. He cracked ribs. David bruised his face so badly production was halted. By the time cameras rolled, both men were battered, already carrying wounds hidden beneath makeup. What was supposed to be a 2-minute scuffle ballooned into a 6-minute epic, the longest fight scene of its kind at the time. Some executives begged Carpenter to cut it down, fearing audiences would laugh. Instead, it became the film's crown jewel. Brutal, ugly, unforgettable. A fight that wasn't just staged, it was survived.
I've got one that can see.
It wasn't just a fight scene, it was a war of attrition. And by the end, both actors had the scars to prove it. Hidden Fact 7. Political backlash, Hollywood buried. When They Live hit theaters in 1988, critics didn't just dislike it, they attacked it. The New York Times dismissed it as cheesy. Others mocked it as paranoid trash. But Carpenter knew the truth. They weren't just mocking the film's quality, they were mocking its message. In Reagan's America, greed was celebrated, consumerism was patriotic, and Wall Street was king. They Live spat in the face of that culture, showing elites as parasites feeding on the masses. Conservative critics saw it as dangerous. Liberal reviewers didn't rush to defend it either, wary of being labeled radical. Hollywood buried it under ridicule, pretending it was nothing more than a B-movie with aliens and wrestlers. Carpenter later said the backlash wasn't accidental. It was a way of disarming the film's anger, reducing a sharp political weapon into a punchline. And for decades, the label stuck until audiences began looking closer.
Change. Now they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone. Let us make some money.
They tried to laugh. They live out of existence. But the joke didn't last. The truth was far too sharp to stay buried. Hidden Fact 8. Roddy Piper's Secret Doubts. Behind the sunglasses and swagger, Roddy Piper was drowning in insecurity. Wrestling had made him a star, but Hollywood was a different arena. On set, he was surrounded by trained actors like Keith David and Meg Foster, and he often worried he was in over his head. Carpenter saw his unease. Piper was quiet between takes, replaying lines in his head, doubting his every move. In his private notes, Piper even wondered if he should walk away, fearing the film might expose him as a fraud. But Carpenter pushed him forward, reminding him that Nada wasn't supposed to be polished. He was supposed to be rough, awkward, out of place in a world that didn't see him. Piper's doubts became the character's doubts, and in the end, that raw vulnerability gave the film its humanity. The man who thought he didn't belong became the heart of a classic.
All right.
Piper thought his flaws would sink him, but they became his greatest weapon. In his doubt, They Live found its soul. Hidden Fact 9. Meg Foster's eyes they couldn't control. When John Carpenter cast Meg Foster as Holly, he knew her presence alone would unsettle audiences. Her eyes, icy, crystalline, almost inhuman, made her look like she didn't quite belong in the world around her. No special effects could have matched it, but those same eyes created headaches for the crew. Lighting technicians struggled to keep them from reflecting unnaturally. Cameramen complained that her gaze pulled focus, distracting from other performances. Foster herself was aware of it. She joked that directors often told her to tone down her eyes, as if such a thing were possible. In They Live, however, that unsettling quality became an asset. Holly's true loyalties remain murky throughout the film, and Foster's cold stare turned every scene into a question mark. Was she ally or enemy? Victim or traitor? Carpenter leaned into that ambiguity, allowing her natural presence to blur the line between human and alien. Sometimes, the scariest thing doesn't need makeup. Meg Foster didn't need prosthetics to unsettle. Her eyes were the special effect. And in They Live, they made every glance a threat. Hidden Fact 10. The propaganda posters no one noticed. Obey, consume, conform. These commands, hidden beneath the glossy surface of Los Angeles billboards, became the film's most iconic images. But most fans don't realize how far Carpenter's team went to create them. Hundreds of subliminal signs were plastered across the city, tucked into alleys, storefronts, and even real neighborhoods. Some never even appeared on screen. They were background dressing, glimpsed only for a second. Passers-by often stopped to stare, unsure if they were part of an actual advertising campaign. One story from the crew claimed a pedestrian tried to call city officials, believing "obey" was a real political statement. To Carpenter, that confusion was the point. He wanted the audience to feel surrounded, as if the control extended beyond the frame of the movie. The posters weren't just set design, they were an invasion. Hollywood asked for aliens. Carpenter gave them a war on consumerism, plastered right onto its own streets. Those billboards weren't just props, they were weapons. And for a moment, Los Angeles itself became part of the rebellion. Hidden Fact 11. The day filming nearly stopped. Halfway through production, the shoot nearly collapsed. Budgets were already slashed, schedules already tight, and then the crew was hit with a nightmare. Delays that threatened to shut everything down. One camera malfunction cost them an entire day of shooting. Locations suddenly became unavailable. Carpenter was furious. He believed some of it wasn't just bad luck, but studio pressure meant to squeeze him. Piper later recalled the tension, describing how the atmosphere on set shifted into near paranoia. Every lost hour felt like sabotage. At one point, Carpenter threatened to walk unless the studio gave him the time he needed. They relented, barely. But the confrontation rattled everyone. For the cast, it was proof that the film wasn't just fiction. Even behind the camera, unseen forces seemed determined to control, delay, or derail the message. They Live was a war being fought on two fronts, on screen and in the boardroom. And in both battles, victory was never guaranteed.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
On screen or off, They Live was a war. And every delay proved the enemy wasn't just fiction, it was real. Hidden Fact 12. The music that was almost silenced. Carpenter's films were always haunted by his own music. Minimalist, pulsing, and hypnotic. They Live was no exception. Working with Alan Howarth, Carpenter created a score that felt like a bluesy heartbeat, slow and menacing, echoing through empty streets. But when he delivered it to the studio, they balked. Executives wanted something louder, faster, more sci-fi. They thought the soundtrack was too sparse, too strange. Carpenter refused to change it. To him, the music was the soul of the film, the sound of paranoia creeping in like smoke. In some screenings, critics mocked it, saying it felt lazy or unfinished. But fans later realized the score was essential. It wasn't meant to thrill, it was meant to unnerve. Carpenter's music didn't just accompany the images, it whispered the truth hiding beneath them. Without that steady, unsettling rhythm, They Live would have been just another alien movie. With it, it became a prophecy. Carpenter's score didn't shout, it stalked. And its quiet menace is what turned They Live into prophecy.
Wait! Hey! You better find yourself some...
Hidden Fact 13. The shot that terrified the crew. One of the most unsettling moments in They Live comes not from the aliens, but from the city itself. As Piper walks through Los Angeles wearing the glasses, the camera lingers on crowds of people, faces suddenly revealed as monstrous. What few know is that this sequence terrified even the crew. The alien masks were grotesque up close, designed with exposed skulls and hollow eyes. During filming, extras walked through real city streets, dressed as the creatures. Ordinary pedestrians weren't warned. People screamed, cars stopped, and at least one child burst into tears upon seeing an alien pass by. The discomfort spread to the set itself. Crew members later said they felt watched, unsettled, as though the film had tapped into something too real. Carpenter encouraged that feeling, insisting it fed the atmosphere. But for those present, The fear wasn't just fictional. It was the eerie sense that maybe, just maybe, the sunglasses weren't lying after all.
White male, 30s, long hair. Mama don't like tattletales.
The aliens were meant to be masks, but on those streets, they felt like revelations. They live blurred the line, and fear bled into reality. Hidden fact 14, the line that changed pop culture forever. I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. The line is iconic, quoted endlessly in pop culture. But it wasn't in the script. It was Roddy Piper's. A leftover from his wrestling days, Piper carried around a notebook filled with one-liners he never used in the ring. Carpenter encouraged him to flip through it, to see if any might fit Nada's defiant personality. When Piper delivered the bubblegum line, Carpenter laughed, but kept it. During test screenings, audiences erupted. Some cheered. Others were stunned into silence. Over time, it became bigger than the movie itself, echoed in video games, songs, and other films. What began as a throwaway line turned into a generational catchphrase. But its meaning went deeper than comedy. In one sentence, it captured the heart of They Live. A working man, armed with nothing but anger, finally daring to fight back. What started as a wrestler's throwaway became a cultural battle cry. One line, "And they live," was immortal. Hidden fact 15. The editing tricks no one talks about. They Live looks simple, straightforward, unpolished. But the editing was anything but ordinary. Carpenter and editor Gib Jaffe used subtle tricks to amplify paranoia. Cuts that lingered too long, reaction shots held a beat past comfort, transitions that made reality feel slightly unstable. Most viewers never noticed consciously, but their unease grew with every frame. One trick involved the sunglasses sequences. Instead of a smooth transition between illusion and reality, Carpenter demanded abrupt, jarring cuts, so the audience felt the shock alongside Nada. The edits were so sharp that some executives accused him of being sloppy, of failing to polish the film. But it was intentional. Carpenter wanted the movie to feel rough, imperfect, like a transmission breaking through static. Critics misread it as cheapness. Fans later saw it as brilliance. In They Live, the editing didn't just tell the story. It trained the audience's eyes, forcing them to question what they were seeing, just like the glasses themselves.
And who are you, little dog?
The cuts weren't mistakes. They were weapons. They Live used its own edits to train audiences to see the cracks in reality. Hidden fact 16. The deleted ending that changed everything. Carpenter once considered a much darker ending for They Live. Instead of Nada's final act exposing the aliens to the world, the story originally concluded with humanity still trapped, the control system unbroken. It was bleak, hopeless, and brutally honest. But Universal panicked. They feared audiences would reject a movie that offered no catharsis, no moment of victory. Carpenter resisted, but with his career already strained, he compromised. The ending was rewritten into the now iconic twist, a shocking, grotesque reveal that cut to black before any real resolution. Fans embraced it, but that shadow of the lost ending still lingers. It would have turned They Live into one of the darkest statements in mainstream cinema. A film without hope, only despair. Today, it remains a phantom cut that fans speculate about, a glimpse of what might have been if Carpenter had been allowed to go all the way. Perhaps too much truth was simply too dangerous for Hollywood. The ending we got was brutal, but the one we lost was devastating. Maybe Hollywood feared the truth, or maybe it just feared we weren't ready to face it. Hidden fact. 17. The government paranoia around the film. During production, Carpenter joked that the government probably had eyes on They Live, but the joke had teeth. The film's open attack on consumerism and political control drew suspicion, especially from critics who accused it of being anti-capitalist propaganda. Some even suggested Carpenter had gone too far, blurring the line between satire and conspiracy. Piper recalled whispers that certain people weren't happy about the message. While no direct evidence of interference exists, Carpenter himself later claimed that the backlash felt organized, as if forces larger than movie reviewers were at work. The paranoia wasn't limited to Hollywood either. Fringe groups seized on the film, twisting it into proof of real-world conspiracies. Carpenter grew frustrated, insisting it was a metaphor, not a manifesto. Yet the unease lingered. They Live didn't just anger critics. It unsettled powerful people who preferred audiences consume quietly, without questioning. In that sense, the paranoia around the movie only proved its message. Someone, somewhere, didn't want it to be heard.
Projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet.
They dismissed it as paranoia. But the louder the pushback, the clearer the truth became. They Live was hitting too close to home. Hidden fact. 18. Carpenter's career collapse. After They Live for Carpenter, They Live was supposed to be a comeback. Instead, it was the beginning of an exile. The film underperformed at the box office, dismissed as camp by critics, and executives wrote him off as unreliable. Hollywood, always quick to punish defiance, pushed him to the margins. Budgets shrank. Scripts dried up. By the early 1990s, Carpenter, once the mastermind behind Halloween, The Thing, and Escape from New York, was reduced to making smaller, less ambitious projects. The man who had once been seen as a revolutionary voice was now branded difficult. In interviews, Carpenter admitted he felt betrayed. He believed They Live had struck a nerve too raw, and Hollywood retaliated by closing doors. Ironically, the film's message about invisible systems of control came true for its own creator. He had pulled back the curtain, and in doing so, found himself cast out. Carpenter didn't just lose a movie. He lost his place in the industry he once dominated.
Look at them, they're everywhere!
I don't know. Maybe they can see Valley 5th and Spring.
Carpenter made a film about control, and Hollywood proved his point by silencing him. They Live didn't just cost him box office glory, it cost him his throne. Hidden fact. 19. The cult revival Hollywood didn't see coming. By the 1990s, They Live was a forgotten relic. VHS sales were modest. Late-night cable reruns brought small bursts of attention, but Hollywood had buried it. Then something strange happened. College campuses began showing it at midnight screenings. Punk bands sampled its dialogue. Counterculture zines hailed it as a masterpiece of anti-establishment art. Slowly, They Live rose from the ashes of failure. By the 2000s, it was everywhere. Quoted in pro wrestling, referenced in comics, echoed in memes, the once mocked bubblegum line became a cultural anthem. And as corporate influence grew in the real world, Carpenter's once dismissed message felt eerily prophetic. Hollywood hadn't seen it coming. They thought They Live would vanish, like so many low-budget sci-fi films of the 80s. Instead, it thrived, finding an audience outside the system that tried to silence it. Carpenter's warning hadn't died. It had only gone underground, waiting for the world to catch up.
The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert.
Buried by Hollywood, reborn by rebellion, They Live didn't fade. It multiplied, proving some truths can't stay underground forever. Hidden Fact, Round 20. Why They Live Still Feels Too Real Today. Decades after its release, They Live feels less like fiction and more like foresight. The alien overlords of Carpenter's film are metaphors, but metaphors that grow sharper with every passing year. A world dominated by screens, a society flooded with advertising, a culture where obedience is rewarded and questioning is punished. What once seemed like science fiction now looks uncomfortably familiar. Fans revisit the film not for nostalgia, but for recognition. They see themselves in nada, stumbling through a world where truth is hidden in plain sight. Carpenter never claimed to be a prophet. He said he was just angry, just trying to express his frustration with Reagan-era America. But the resonance has outlived its era. That's why They Live endures, not as a relic, but as a mirror. And every time we look into it, we're forced to ask, how much of it was fiction, and how much of it is still happening right now?
We have faith in our leaders. We're optimistic as to what becomes of it all.
What began as anger became prophecy. They Live isn't just a movie, it's a mirror, and the reflection only gets sharper with time. They Live wasn't just a sci-fi cult classic. It was a full-blown social and cinematic rebellion, wrapped in sunglasses and subversive one-liners. Behind the alien masks and dystopian streets, the production faced censorship scares, casting dilemmas, and behind-the-scenes chaos that almost buried Carpenter's vision, tamer, or completely different, if not for bold choices and stubborn creativity. If this peek behind the hidden truths of They Live blew your mind, share your favorite shocking fact or moment in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's wildest sets. Remember, some truths are too eye-opening to stay hidden.